King George VI, whose full name was Albert Frederick Arthur George, was born at York Cottage on the Royal Sandringham estate in Norfolk during the reign of Queen Victoria in 1895. His father was Prince George, who would go on to become King George V, and his mother Mary of Teck. His birthday, 14th of December 1895, was the anniversary of the death of Queen Victoria's husband, Prince Albert. The family was uncertain how the Queen would take the news of the birth, so they named the child after her late husband to honor him and to gratify the Queen. Thus, King George's real first name was Albert. Among family, he was known as Bertie. At birth, he was fourth in line to the throne and had never expected or wished to succeed to the throne. As spare to the heir, Bertie was outshone by his elder brother Edward in every way. Edward was charismatic, while Bertie was shy, anxious, and was described as easily frightened and somewhat prone to tears. Their guardian and tutor, Henry Hansel, once wrote, "One could wish that he, Bertie, had more of Prince Edward's application and keenness." Bertie and their siblings were brought up at York Cottage. As was custom, his parents were generally removed from his day-to-day upbringing. By all accounts, their father, George V, was infamous for being a tough disciplinarian. His inability to curb his own temper terrorized his offspring, who could be punished for something so slight as wearing the wrong kilt with the wrong jacket, biographer Anne Seber describes in The Windsors. And George V knew about that. Once he remarked to the Earl of Derby, "My father was frightened of his mother, I was frightened of my father, and I am damned well going to see to it that my children are frightened of me." Although there is no clear source for the quotation, it is likely that George's parenting approach was not all that different from that adopted by most people at the time. It is believed that the prince's strict upbringing, constantly living on the fear of punishment, contributed to his nervousness. Shy and insecure, Bertie developed a severe stammer from the age of 7, possibly compounded by being made to write with his right hand, though he was naturally left-handed, as was common practice at the time. His father, who did not like to see what he considered weakness, was impatient with his affliction. "Get it out," he would yell as the child struggled to speak. Bertie was knock-kneed like his father and brothers, and was made to wear painful corrective splints, initially by day and night. When the splints interfered with his schoolwork, he was allowed to wear them at night only. With his stammer, splints, strict father, distant mother and flamboyant brother, it was not surprising that he was growing up as a sensitive boy, with crippling insecurity. As late as his teens, Bertie would sit by himself in a dark room rather than draw attention to himself by asking one of the many servants to light the gas. In 1909, he attended the Royal Naval College at Osborne House, where he was nicknamed Sardine due to his measly frame. He was often neglected because his stammer made him too scared to speak. After taking some time to settle down, Bertie found friends. With them, his stammer almost disappeared. Though personally more at ease, he was never more than a mediocre student, 68th out of 68 in the final examinations at Osborne. In Osborne, he met his mentor Louis Grigg, who would go on to play an important role in encouraging this inept and uncertain prince, who possessed a good deal of his father's temper, to approach life with composure. He would cure the prince of the severe peptic ulcers, act as the equerry at Cambridge and partner in Wimbledon in 1926. And that's another story. Back in 1911, Prince Albert moved on to Dartmouth, continued receiving education of a naval officer like his brother. He gained something of a reputation at Dartmouth for skylarking, on one occasion receiving a beating of 6 strokes. In 1910, his father ascended the throne when their grandfather, Edward VII, died. His brother, Prince Edward, became heir to the throne and was ceased of military service. Bertie, on the other hand, was expected to follow a naval career as his father had done. In 1913, he continued training on board in the West Indies and Canada for 6 months. He was commissioned as a midshipman on board HMS Collingwood in September, spending 3 months in the Mediterranean. But he never quite overcame his seasickness. Three weeks after the outbreak of World War I, the gastric problems from which he had spasmodically suffered intensified. After recovering from an emergency appendectomy, he rejoined the war effort. On the 31st of May 1916, Britain and Germany clashed at the Battle of Jutland, the largest naval battle of the Great War. It was an inferno of fire and blood, where 6,000 British seamen and 2,500 Germans died. Right there in the thick of battle was Prince Albert, who is the only British sovereign to have seen action in battle since William IV. The training in the Navy School and subsequent experience in the war front had a significant impact on transforming this bashful, diffident boy into a resilient, determined young man. Although suffered from frequent illness and operations, Prince Albert had shown considerable determination during his time in the forces. His presence at Jutland gave him a status and confidence which he later found of great value. This was an important experience for the prince personally and for the monarchy nationally. George V, on his visit to the Grand Fleet after the battle, declaring, "I am pleased with my son." Prince Albert was mentioned in dispatches for his actions as a turret officer. In November 1917, Albert suffered another medical setback when he had to have surgery for a duodenal ulcer. He was transferred to the Royal Air Force later on and was stationed in France while the war was still in progress. He was the first member of the British royal family to be certified as a fully qualified pilot. In August 1919, he was promoted to squadron leader. That same year, he started at Trinity College, Cambridge. He studied history, economics, and civics for a year. Like other post-war servicemen, they found college and academic life both frustrating and liberating, though he had a special interest in constitutional history. George V permitted his son only 3 terms at Cambridge. The following year, Prince Albert was created Duke of York, as is usual for a monarch's second son. It was at this time that he started to take on more royal duties, representing his father and touring coal mines, factories, and rail yards. These visits lead him to becoming known as the Industrial Prince. Building on his Royal Air Force experience of tutoring students, he began a series of annual summer camps where boys of different socio-economic background were brought together for games, competitions, and discussions. The Duke attended each camp annually. But his stutter and his embarrassment over it, together with a tendency to shyness, caused him to appear less confident in public than his older brother, Edward.